Hey, Dr. Christensen here with you. Hope you're doing well. Crazy times right now, just unprecedented stuff. And I wanted to reach out and share some steps that can be helpful for you and your family. So here's the top 12 things you can do to prevent your risks for coronavirus. And I want to start off with the top thing that I would suggest not to do. I've been hearing a lot of talk right now about having antibiotics on supply, to use them for symptoms, to use them for prophylaxis. And we're talking about hydroxychloroquine, also called chloroquine or azithromycin. And what we know to date is that they have been used in hospital settings, generally in combination, generally along with intravenous antivirals as well. And there is evidence showing that the antibiotics do seem to lower the amount of viral particles found in respiratory droplets. That's an encouraging first piece of data. And with there not being much else to go on, that does have some use, and it is have some valid use in those hospital settings. However, there's no evidence that it has any clinical benefit, meaning that it is not proven to help people recover more quickly. It's not shown to help people get over their symptoms more safely, and it's not shown to have any net benefit. So all these antibiotics collectively have effects upon cardiac function, specifically a phenomenon called QT prolongation. So they're not things that are benign, and they have harmful effects upon the general immune response. Now, there are some trials that are enrolling people. They're just signing people up for trials to see if maybe chloroquine or hydroxychloroquine could have some roles to play in prophylaxis. It's a theory, it's a stretch. No one has any good options. In general, when we're looking at very early stage research like we are right now, almost all ideas do not pan out. So the odds are much greater than 99% that these will not end up being accepted therapies long term. But there's preliminary investigation going on. Now, I wanted to talk about this because I've had many reach out and request prescriptions of these. Now, the drawback is twofold. One of which is it probably wouldn't work and it may be more harm than benefit. And the second is that it's not ethical. If there is some benefit in those who are hospitalized, we wouldn't want to take the supply away. And its use in a hospital setting in the intensive care unit is not the same thing as home use for symptoms. So if you are having some symptoms, either they're at a level in which you're okay to be monitored at home, or they're at a level in which you need to be hospitalized and given intensive treatment. There's not really a place to say, I'm at home not feeling well, but I've got some antibiotics, so I will take these and therefore not need to go to the hospital. There's no data at all suggesting that's a good idea. In fact, everything we know suggests that's a bad idea. So don't run out and get prescriptions of antibiotics and feel like that will be protecting you, because there's no data saying that. If anything, it's more likely to be harmful than of beneficial effects. Okay, now that we covered that one, let's talk about the 12 things you can do that will be helpful. Now, the first one you know, but I want to talk about in some depth, and this is just exposure. So social isolation, but for real. For real. You know, China has seen that about 2 months after government mandated complete social isolation, they've seen now no new cases for a couple of consecutive days. We have not achieved that. And my friends and my family, just talking to people, most are not practicing full social isolation when you get down to it. There's some friends are still seeing some contact with, and they're calling themselves quarantine buddies. And many of these friends have some external contacts with those who are not under quarantine. So it does take full social isolation for this to work. And it's worth doing. This is a big deal. So yeah, we've got to get to full social isolation to lower the spread of this. And even then, it's going to be coming back again. But so that's one part of exposure. And then of course, hand washing. And this is something to where getting packages anytime you are in the public, going to a park, you know, touching a surface, opening a door. And this should be the whole 20 seconds minimum, like 2 good hand washing episodes. The other helpful trick, if you've got gloves, wear exam gloves anytime you're out of the house. Now, they're not magic, but what happens is when you're wearing exam gloves, you're gonna pause before you touch your face. And most of us touch our face a dozen times an hour or more, you know, very, very frequently. But with exam gloves on, you've got a sense that, oh, maybe my hands are contaminated. Yeah, it's just not the same automatic reflux. So if you are out and away, wear exam gloves, anything you would contact with them, such as your car door handle, your steering wheel, sterilize those things afterward with some antiseptic wipes. And then last, if you can, if you've got a mask and you do have to go shopping or go in public, I would wear the mask. Now, there's clear evidence that masks are not panaceas. They will not make you immune and unable to get sick. But there's going to be less particles you're breathing in, so they will cut the odds. So if you've got them, I would wear them. Okay, so that was number one. HPA function. So this is one of the biggest variables about how well your immune system works. This is your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And when it is right, your body goes through cycles of repair and regeneration. So, and then activity. So we've got times in which we're fixing things and times in which we're really functioning and performing. It's kind of like your car. You drive it and then you change your oil and fill your tank. Then you drive it some more. So that's the same rhythm we have in our bodies. And this is orchestrated by our HPA response. And our HPA response is stable or not based upon our stress load and also based upon our daily circadian rhythms. So these are things we can act upon in a helpful way. First step is, go out of your way and sleep a lot. Sleep probably more than you're even used to. And I would tag that on in terms of going to bed earlier. I would not suggest sleeping in later. There's pretty good data that when you sleep in later, it's kind of like jet lag. You're not really helping. You can disrupt your daily rhythm. But going to bed a bit earlier, not a problem. There's no real harm, but wake up at the same normal waking time. Shoot for half an hour, maybe even an hour, but binge on your sleep right now. Super powerful thing. Try some white noise, go through a nighttime ritual involving taking a bath, using some lavender, whatever it takes, but do some things to get into a ritual of adding on to your sleep. You've probably got time on your hands. Your schedule's probably more free than you'd even like. Now, another thing I'm going to encourage, if you're not already, get into a regular practice of some daily meditation. Now, the main thing we're thinking about in terms of general immune defenses is ways that we can augment a compound called IgA, which is just immunoglobulin A. A doesn't stand for anything, it's just the first one they found. So the more we can boost IgA, the more the barriers of our skin, our respiratory tract, our digestive tract keep the bad stuff out. And there's been documented benefits about a type of meditation practice called the relaxation response. This came out of a gentleman named Herbert Benson and his work in the late 60s, mid 70s, and shown to be what was the lowest simple common denominator of a meditative practice. And the gist of it is that taking time regularly to be in a quiet setting and to repeat something over and over again in your mind, like you're saying it in your head, like you're being deliberate about your discursive thought. And what he found was what it was you say was not important. So it wasn't so much that you were taking the meaning of a word and using some power from that meaning. It was more so the fact that you were being repetitive and allowing your mind to have something to focus on that mattered. Here's a version of that I'll train you in all of like 3-4 minutes that literally is as effective as any other versions that have been studied in the context of relaxation response and immune benefit. This has been clinically shown to significantly raise IgA and have numerous other effects upon the overall immune response. Duration, 10 minutes per session, once per day can be effective. There may be additional benefits by multiple times, but really once per day makes a clear, measurable difference. Time of day, if you got options, do it in the morning. Your important rituals, knock them out first thing. You've done them, and you can move through the day knowing that you've taken care of something important to set the day up for you functioning better. The setting, choose a quiet place in which you'll not be disturbed. You've probably got family at home. Let them know to watch the kids, keep the pets away, don't put your phone in the room with you. You want to be sitting with your back straight. They've done studies on this posture stuff with meditation too. It's not important that you're sitting in a lotus pose or something else exotic, but you do want your back straight. You want to be comfortable. So I'm sitting on a stool right now, and that could work totally fine for these purposes. You could sit on a chair, as long as you weren't like slouching in a heavy backrest chair. And you could also be sitting on the floor, kneeling if that's comfortable. But for a lot of us, just sitting on a chair with your back straight is probably going to be our position. Hands, not important. You can fold them and sit them in your lap so they're not a distraction. And as you do this, you would have your eyes closed for the practice. And you want to repeat, and you want to have a repetition that's inhale and exhale, that you're timing with that. And there's a certain cadence, a certain speed to it that's been studied as well. You can use various terms, but I like to use things that are completely just free of any concepts, things that won't really have your mind go on various tangents chasing. So internally, what I like to use and what's been studied as well is just counting. So you'll count on the in-breath, reverse your count on the out-breath. So I'm going to inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll exhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, doing the practice, that would be going on in my head. You wouldn't hear it. So it would just be internal dialogue. And I would have eyes closed as well. So breathing in, 1, 2, 3, 4, and out, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now that's about the cadence you want for your counting. And if it's such to where you're breathing much more slowly, you can sure tag on numbers. You can go up, 6, up to 6, down to 1, up to 8, down to 1, however. And that might even change as you sit for a little while. As you deepen into the practice, you may find that your breathing is slowing such to where you need a different number than worked well to start. And that's totally fine. Adjust those as need be. Don't be doing it too often. It can be a nuisance past some point, but get it to where it's pretty comfortable that the normal pace of your breath is about that count at about that pace. And it's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Or 1, 2, 3, 4. 4, 3, 2, 1. So a pace about like that. And it's 10 minutes. So set a timer. You can use a stopwatch. You can set something, well, not the phone, right? You could, if you were on airplane mode, you could use your timer on the phone. But some way so you know that you'll be informed when the time is up. Otherwise, your mind can start to think, how long have I been here? Is it too long? Am I done yet? How much longer do I have to go? So you have a timer going so you know that you'll be notified. But that's it. There's been no shortage of just encyclopedias of content written on how to meditate. And there's so much nuance and depth and complexity people can go into. But in terms of getting some clear benefit for your immune system, no joke, what you just heard there is all you need to know to get going. So get going. It's a good thing in general. Life puts enough in our lap to throw off our stress response. But right now, come on, doubly so. We're all in a big mess of soup and we're all sorting it out. So give yourself every possible advantage. All right, number 3 is going to be hydration. Think about half to an ounce of water per pound of your body weight per day. And the higher side is relevant if you're more physically active, especially if you're outdoors and it's warmer or whatnot. But think about a half an ounce of water per pound of body weight as a real bare minimum. I'm about 165 pounds, so half of that's going to be what? So 50, 65, 67 and a half. That's not a lot. That's a little over 2 quarts. That's a bare minimum. Yeah, if you're training, you could easily double that. So my size, that's about 2 to 4 quarts per day. And that's of water. Any other liquids you have would want to be in addition to that. The relevance of water is your body's barrier function, your mucous membranes. Any level of dehydration does make them less robust and does make your body less able to filter out the various waste that you're exposed to. Number 4 is going to be dietary protein. And we're thinking about foods that have long shelf lives, things that have low cost. We've stocked up, we've got whatever we're going to have on hand. And protein is one of the most critical elements for a good immune response. And the name itself, protein, was meaning of primary importance. And our immune cells, they're made of proteins. And they're made of ones that are essential, ones that we can't always make internally, and ones that can be difficult to get from a diet that's lower in protein. So you do want quality protein. And you want that, we'll do a little bit of math, you also want that relative to your body size. So somewhere around a gram of protein per pound of lean body mass. A 140-pound woman who's, say, a quarter body fat would have about 105 pounds of lean body mass. So she would want roughly 25 grams of protein 4 times a day, or about 33 grams 3 times a day. And that's a great place to keep a good immune response. That also has effects upon the barrier integrity, the IgA function, but there's so much data saying that lean body mass, just your skeletal muscle mass, is one of the biggest determinants of your risk for severe respiratory disease. As people age, when they lose their muscle mass, that's when they get pneumonia. And our big thought right now about who has complications from COVID, it's who's getting pneumonia, it's who's getting bad respiratory versions of that. So the better your lean body mass is, the more leeway you've got for respiratory health, and the more you can survive those occasional stressors. And that's all about your protein. It is about your exercise, super important too, but it's honestly the protein's a bigger single variable. So yeah, we'll talk about activity in other ones, but protein is the one for right now to think about. Number 5 is going to be culinary spices. We've got so much data about the things that we think of as just common cooking ingredients. And it's not a coincidence that these things have been perennial favorites throughout the world cultures. They have beneficial effects. And so often in history, we didn't have refrigeration, we didn't have safe food. And through trial and error, people learned that various spices added to food would cut our risk from infectious disease. So a lot of the good staples, garlic, ginger, turmeric, rosemary, cinnamon, cardamom, black pepper, basil, those are probably the top few in terms of their data contents. And you'll find versions of those. You can have fresh or dried or freshly ground or whatnot. And pretty much all versions have fair amounts of benefit. Something you will see too is an idea that massive amounts are necessary. And people think about supplementing with high potency extracts of turmeric or basil, or you'll see also cinnamon extracts. And honestly, once you get outside of the amounts that you would probably get from food, the data gets weaker and you can find evidence of harm. So I'm not a fan of maxing these things out in whopping amounts and concentrates and isolates, but I'm a huge fan of adding them into lots of your recipes. So I've been doing a daily blog, and each daily blog includes a recipe, and each recipe uses some of these ingredients. So just know that that's a resource you've got. I also intentionally am using ingredients that you probably got in your pantry right now. And I know we don't have all the options available. We're thinking about long shelf life, but using the stuff you've got, I've made a ton of recipes that draw upon these great culinary spices so you can have them every day. Okay, number 6 is going to be adequate micronutrients. Now, this is something to where it's not mega dose, but it's about avoiding deficiency. And probably the best documented single one would be vitamin D. Soon to follow would be zinc and molybdenum. Now, vitamin D is one to where we see that there are narrow blood levels that correlate with the lowest risks of total mortality, which means early death. And those blood levels, I wish it wasn't such a narrow range, but it really is. It's probably in the mid-30s to the mid-40s nanogram per mil. It's not deficient, but it's also not a ton. Many people, if you're watching this video and you've been thinking about your health, you've been educating yourself, you might be getting too much vitamin D. No joke. It's quite possible you're getting more than necessary. And we do base that on blood levels when possible. This is probably not a great time to go get a blood test. So if you've not had your vitamin D level measured, and you don't know where you are, or maybe if you were above that range that I'm talking about, most adults will do well on about 2,000 units per day. That's my general starting place for adults. So we've built that into our daily reset pack. So you've got that much there as a base amount. Now, if you've been measured and you are below 35 to 45 nanograms per mil on a consistent, well-absorbed dose of 2,000 units per day, you might need a little more. And that does happen. That's not most people, but there are some that are in those categories. But you would base that on your levels. You wouldn't base that on your concerns. More is not better. More is worse. It's all about being at the best range, and extra amounts are not of extra benefit. Molybdenum is one worth mentioning. It's one of the more critical minerals that's a big part of the immune response. And I mention it because it's often lacking in supplementation, but it's also lacking in a lot of popular diets. So many diets have excluded intact grains and beans from them, And the drawback is there's not really much else that contains the mineral molybdenum in an appreciable quantity. So if you're paleo, you want to be supplementing with this because you'd be low otherwise. Again, built into our daily reset pack. When you're on that, there's nothing separate that you need. Okay, number 7, Iga agonists. These are things that are specifically shown to help increase this IgA level in the body. And of those, one of the best documented things is Saccharomyces boulardii. Now, this is tricky because this is often categorized as a probiotic, but it's not a bacteria. So I've written recently about negatives of bacterial-based probiotics. And those are the bulk of ones that you'll find, especially if they're refrigerated, if they've got lactobacillus, if they're soil-based, if they're bifidobacter. These things can be useful in some contexts, but those contexts are really specific to a culture. So if a doctor said you're low in one of those, then you should use that. But they're not things that I would recommend to take indiscriminately. And now we even have data suggesting that they're not good to take if you've been on an antibiotic. Now, is that bizarre or what? But I meant what I said. I would not take bacterial probiotics if you've recently taken an antibiotic or if you've had some ongoing immune stress. They may be harmful. They may be counterproductive. Now, Saccharomyces is a yeast-based compound, and it supports your body's own anaerobic bacteria. The other probiotics we talk about, they're all aerobic organisms. They're all ones that live in oxygen. But the bulk of your important flora are anaerobic, like 99% or more. And the pills of probiotics you take that are bacterial, they don't help that, and they might make the big picture worse. So Saccharomyces is different completely, and it is useful. It's something I do encourage as an IgA agonist. And there's good data saying that it does cut the risk of exposure and conversion to infection, and it does also protect the immune system after antibiotic usage. Okay, so number 7, next one up would be resistant starch. And there's just mountains of data that your general immune defenses are inextricably linked to the amount of short-chain fatty acids in your diet. And short-chain fats are things like butyrate, acetate, propionate. These are 5 to 10 carbon fats that are super fuel for your good protective immune cells that live in the gut lining. And we get these primarily from sources of resistant starch. And in the diet, this is going to be potatoes, especially when they're boiled as opposed to baked. We'll get this from legumes of all type, bananas and plantains when they're underripe. And this is built into the Daily Reset Shake. So when you're on the Daily Reset Shake, you've got a quality standalone meal, a long shelf life, you've got a good source of plant-derived alkalizing protein, and you've also got your resistant starch. Now, those that have had digestive concerns or who have immunocompromise of some sorts or autoimmunity, they've got the option of adding additional resistant starch in the RS Complete. But resistant starch in the diet and in supplemental form clearly raises short-chain fats and clearly benefits generalized immune defenses, along with a big, long other list of benefits. Next up in terms of IgA agonists would be agaricus. Now, these are also the common white button mushrooms. These are pretty powerful because they do help to make the body resistant against viruses. They also activate relevant immune cells, and they lower inflammatory markers like tumor necrosis factor alpha. So these can be worth adding in supplement form as well. Agaricus extracts, I do use those and encourage those. And if you have plain old mushrooms, the white button mushrooms from the supermarket, they are useful. They are something that does have a limited shelf life, so we may not have those around for a long time if you're stocking up less frequently on groceries. There are also subtypes, and the subtypes that have been used in supplemental form may have even more powerful benefits. Okay, so now we're thinking of a new category. Now for the next couple, I'm going to think about some natural things that have been shown to have antiviral activity, specifically relative to COVID-19 virus, the SARS-CoV-2 virus. Now, I don't recommend natural antibiotics and natural antimicrobials. And that's going to be things like grapefruit seed extract or hydrastis or oregano oil or silver extracts. Now, these are things that do kill bacteria. we're not talking about bacteria. We're talking about a very specific virus. And in general, things that are good at killing bacteria often make us less resistant to viruses. They are essentially antibiotics, and they can create resistance patterns within the body. The body can have bacteria that develop resistance to anything you take on a regular basis. Plus, you can harm your important good versions of flora that bacterial probiotics may not help with. So I don't recommend herbal antibiotics. I don't recommend herbal antimicrobials, but there's two natural compounds that have relevant, now known antiviral activity against the SARS-CoV-2 virus. The first is going to be citrus bioflavonoids. And these are things that have been shown to inhibit the development of the virus and also block its replication. Basically, there's a molecule in it that fits on a binding site that makes the virus unable to attach to a host cell. And that's the process. The virus is kind of like, if you've ever seen the LIM, the lunar module, little lunar lander from Apollo 11, it comes down and lands on a cell and injects its DNA, and then that host cell makes more copies of the virus. But before it lands, it has to anchor. And there are extracts now we see from citrus that inhibit that anchoring. The more you're consuming citrus, especially the zest, so the stuff that's like just the outer peel, may be of some benefit that way. I have included the pertinent bioflavonoids in the daily reset pack. I think it's that important that I want this to be part of your just daily routine supplementation. So again, if you're on the daily reset pack, you're getting that. Also add citrus into your diet best you can. And I'll be sure to add some recipes that use the zest of citrus. It's cool stuff. You want to have a microplaner if you don't already, and it's a great thing to use in the kitchen. Now, number 9, next up for a powerful natural antiviral would be licorice extract. Now, licorice has actually been approved by the Chinese version of the FDA for having powerful effects upon benefiting overall immune response. And it's been studied in terms of its effects on this exact organism, the SARS-CoV-2. There's some clinical trials going on using it in conjunction with vitamin C, but it's been known to have antiviral properties against hepatitis B and other viruses for some time. Now, the drawback is that licorice itself does have compounds that can raise blood pressure for some people. There's a compound called glycyrrhizin, and for some, it can delay an enzyme called 11-hydroxybeta-steroid dehydrogenase, or HSB, and that can cause more sodium to build up. That can cause you to have higher blood pressure. So there's good evidence that DGL, deglycyrrhizinated licorice, may have a similar effect upon the viral exposure. So that's something I am also recommending to consider as a natural adjunct to give you more resistance, is DGL. Cool thing too is that it's chewable, it's tasty, no big drawbacks. Licorice candy, Twizzlers or whatnot, those don't actually have licorice in them, so they're not helpful in this capacity. But DGL can be, and it would not be a negative issue for blood pressure or cardiac health. Number 10 would be some immune adaptogens. Now, of these are also not the antibiotics. These are things that have a more regulatory effect. And probably the best studied overall would be astragalus. This is also called milk vetch. Pretty cool stuff. These come as big tongue depressor looking sticks, and they're tasty. You know, herbal medicines can be on a continuum where some are exacting, like fraction of a drop dosing, and toxic if done in the wrong way to the wrong person. And then others can be food-like, to where you eat a lot of it, like a carrot or something. And astragalus is way over on that food-like side. So it's been well studied for big different populations. No drawbacks to it. It's palatable. It improves kidney health as well. And also there's data showing that coronavirus class organisms can be inhibited by astragalus. So apart from antiviral effects, it also has general immune adaptation effects. And it's been used for just centuries in Chinese medicine as a staple in a lot of herbal immune formulas for that reason. Okay, number 11 for good things to do is adding in more mushrooms overall. Now, I mentioned some other ones about the white button mushrooms. There are also the medical mushrooms. Cordyceps is one of the top examples of that. This one has been shown to regulate humoral cellular immunity and also improve the little Pac-Men, their ability to eat things up, or to say that medically, the phagocytosis of the macrophages. So yeah, your immune cells that crunch up foreign stuff, Cordyceps helps that work better. Other medical mushrooms, reishi, shiitake, maitake, likely have similar effects, but just lots of documentation around Cordyceps. So this is another thing that I am a fan of, and there are blends I recommend that do include it. And then last step, number 12, beta glucans. These are things you get from food. They actually did add them in the Daily Reset pack as well for some more for a bonus for you, but your best doses of beta glucans are going to come from oats. Steel-cut oats, whole oats, old-fashioned oats, doesn't matter. All types have beta glucans. If you are avoiding wheat, it's worth knowing that steel-cut oats, whole oats, and then gluten-free rolled oats are gluten-free. So oats don't have gluten, but some commercial oat products are processed on machines that also process gluten. So some can have it as a contaminant. But again, that's not true for steel-cut oats or whole oats. And then many brands of old-fashioned oats are certified for being gluten-free. You'll also find some of this in barley. So those are the top 12 steps you can do today to help make yourself more resistant. Dr. Alan Christensen here with you. And again, just want to acknowledge what an unusual, difficult time this is. Doing my best to keep you informed. My doctors are all still here for you. You know, we're working daily, we're working hard, and we're available to help make sense of your thyroid function during this time, sort out any acute care symptoms, do whatever else we can to help via telemedicine. So whatever state you're in, we're there, we're available. You're not alone. We are going to get through this. I don't know how soon, I don't know what it will look like. We will look back on this. This will be a pivotal time in our history, and this will be a huge chapter in your health. And that's the ultimate wealth. You know, we're going to be making a lot of decisions about economic stressors and health versus economics. We're making these right now on a national and a global level. At what point do we close school and close businesses because it hurts the economy? That's the decision we're making. And what's happened is that I heard Mayor Cuomo talking about his decisions he's made. And there was a reporter asking him saying, look, you know, a friend of mine owns some restaurants. They just had to lay off 90% of their workforce. You know, what do you think about that? And the mayor said, you know, that's tragic. I'm sorry. I hope he doesn't have anyone die from the illness. And so he said, look, we're talking about saving lives here. And the subtext that comes out of these decisions, which are the correct decisions, is that health first, economy second. You know, we've got to do what we can to survive. We've got to do what we can to get through this and pull through it together. We'll sort out the economy afterward. We're already seeing a lot of good measures available to homeowners, to displaced workers, to small businesses, and many more things to come. We'll pull together, we'll sort out the economics, but right now, health is the biggest wealth. So whatever you can do from these 12 to support yourself, whatever you can do to keep yourself from being exposed to others, from exposing others, this is your top priority right now. Everything else we can deal with later, but we've got to keep on breathing. We've got to stay together. So let's get through this. All right, take great care. I'll see you soon.